Chair Wilkin, Vice Chair White, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the Senate Small Business and Economic Opportunity Committee. My name is David Mahan. I am here on behalf of the Center for Christian Virtue, Ohio's largest Christian public policy organization. I'm pleased to be here today to testify on behalf of SB 261, which proposes to reduce marijuana regulations, expand the number of marijuana dispensaries, make it possible for just about anybody to obtain a medical marijuana card, and increase the maximum THC limit to an unnecessarily high level of 90%. In the February 2nd edition of Cleveland.com's Capital Letter, it was reported that the campaign to legalize recreational marijuana raised $1.3 million last year. Half of it came from the Marijuana Policy Project, the national advocacy organization behind the push for the legislature to legalize medical marijuana. Laura Hancock reports that the other contributions were mainly medical marijuana businesses in Northeast Ohio. So assuming that most everybody in this room realizes that this medical expansion bill is nothing more than the gateway policy for recreational marijuana, I will simply focus my time today on the key lessons Ohio should learn from states that have regretfully traveled down this path. With disastrous outcomes such as increased traffic fatalities according to the AAA, out of control black markets according to every state that is legalized, hiring shortages due to failed drug tests, the exacerbation of the opioid epidemic, and the predatory targeting of children by well-funded addiction-for-profit marijuana industry that produces heavy users by hooking early users. It makes perfect sense that the reputable organizations like the American Medical Association, or the AMA, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, AAA, the American Academy of Family Physicians, and the National Fraternal Order of Police all oppose the commercialization of such a dangerous narcotic. An analysis by Attorney General Yo's Scientific Committee on Opioid Prevention and Education found a death rate in Ohio from opioid overdose in the second quarter of 2020 to be the highest in 10 years. And yet legislators find themselves considering multiple marijuana legalization bills here at the Ohio State House, two advocating for recreational and this one advocating for the expansion of current medical marijuana legislation clearly intended to help pave the way for the other two. In 2016 version of the bill, maximum level of THC was capped at 70%, which is already over 50% higher than necessary for a typical medical use program. Was 70% decided upon in 2015-16 due to the health and safety concerns, or was the legislator just not ready to push the 90% THC envelope prescribed in this new version? Who does a bill like this benefit the most? Ohioans who are already struggling with epidemic rates of addiction, historically high crime, and a mental health crisis, or the marijuana industry whose ultimate goal is not medical, but recreational marijuana, as we've clearly seen in several other states? According to a study entitled Mapping Cannabis Potency in Medical and Recreational Programs in the United States, more than 90% of the legal marijuana products offered in medical dispensaries in the U.S. are much stronger than what clinical studies have shown doctors recommend for chronic pain relief. The study lead author and associate professor of anesthesiology at Wake Forest School of Medicine said, "We know that high potency products should not have a place in the medical realm because of the high risk of developing cannabis use disorders, which are related to exposure to high THC content products." He goes on to say that several earlier studies showed the level of up to 5% THC, the main psychoactive compound in marijuana that provides pain relief as well as intoxication, were sufficient to reduce chronic pain with minimal side effects, up to 5%. You all are considering 90% THC. The research team found that most of the products offered in the medical dispensaries in the study had more than 10% THC and that many had 15% more, the same as available in products at recreational dispensaries. The marijuana industry, who is driving this medical marijuana bill, is actively marketing marijuana as a solution to the opioid epidemic, claiming that marijuana is a safe and effective substitute for opioids for the management of pain. However, the following studies have shown that marijuana is a significant risk factor in the increased non-medical use of opioids. To answer the question, the opioid crisis appears to be worsening where marijuana has been legalized. JAMA International Medicine Journal 2018. Over 30,000 American adults were sampled, and research found that marijuana users were more than twice as likely to move on to abuse prescription opioids. the American Journal of Psychiatry. Prescription opioids were seen as a wonder drug, especially for pain management. We should not repeat history with another wonder drug installed before proper evidence, Addiction magazine. Opioid overdose fatalities have increased in Colorado since legalization, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. While we cannot foretell the future of what the true outcomes of this bill would be, we can and should look at the recent history of what the marijuana industry has done in states like Colorado and California. First, they ride in on the white horse of medical marijuana to deliver us all from chronic pain. Then comes recreational marijuana riding in on promised tax benefits that will get rid of all of our state budget deficits and the failing public schools that the lottery and casino tax revenues failed to rescue. Wellington Webb, a former 12-year Democrat mayor of Colorado and a former supporter of marijuana commercialization, I may add, stated that the money promised for education is going to marijuana regulation and the pot industry. He went on to say that what is actually being produced was a 32% increase in pot-related traffic deaths and more pot dispensaries than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. And I'm sure that it would be no surprise to anyone on this committee where most of those Green Man shops are located. In the first hearing, Representative Golonsky was wise in voicing her concerns about the black market activity that was plagued every legalized state in the nation. In California and Oregon, the legislature is calling upon the National Guard to try to shut down all of the illegal grows that were supposed to miraculously disappear on their own with legalization. In New York, Colorado, and California, they're cutting their own, much if not all of the promised tax revenues to help the white-collar dope dealers compete with the black market dope dealers. To ignore a decade of lived experience of mayors, attorney generals, business owners, doctors, treatment professionals from legalized states would be utter insanity. And that's what I see happening down here at the Ohio State House. And Ohio families deserve more than being used as pawns in a game rigged only to benefit the marijuana industry and its big tobacco, big alcohol investors. And as always, CCV will work tirelessly to reveal the true intent of this medical expansion bill and its sponsors to the people who will ultimately have to bear the weight of its consequences. I appreciate your time and look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you would lean more to an opponent than interested party.
Very interested party, sir. Very interested party.
Ranking Member Brown, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, sir, for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
The last thing that I want to see in Ohio is increased opioid use. Yeah. The last thing I want to see is increased deaths, for overdose deaths from opioids. Yeah. So I'm certainly concerned about the connection, if any, between the use of medical marijuana and the increased use perhaps of opioids. You cite some studies here which seem to indicate that there is a connection. These studies I know are 4 and 5 years old. I'm aware of a new study that underscores the need for additional research on the effect of medical marijuana laws on opioid overdose deaths. And this study cautions against drawing a causal connection between the two and basically says, we don't have enough studies, we need to do more studies. Are you familiar with the study to which I'm referring, and are you aware of any newer studies that support your position than the ones that you cite in your testimony?
To the representative, through the chair, I am all studied out. I have, like many of you, this is a new topic for me. I've worked in the community for years, 20-some years, youth and family. And I am aware of many studies. That's why when we're looking into this, we're looking at what are, reputable organizations like the, AMA, what is AAA saying about traffic fatalities? These are the things, what is animating the press in these legal states? I would say, just even go further, we had in the House Finance Committee, we had a representative from Smart Approaches to Marijuana, whose founder was the drug policy advisor for President Obama, President Clinton, as well as President George W. Bush. And he spoke probably 8 meetings to the Finance Committee. If anybody's interested in hearing about this topic other than from dope dealers, I would gladly have a webinar scheduled as early as next week with the CEO of that organization, Kevin Sabet.
Follow-up?
No follow-up.
Any other questions for the witness? Representative Ginter?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. And I asked my question about THC content prior to reading your testimony. So obviously you've zeroed in on that as well. In your study, is there any enlightening information you can give me in regards to, and again, I am a layperson. You've already indicated the fact that we are all trying to learn about this.
That's right.
And I went through this in 2016, but I'm going through it again. Can you enlighten us as to, obviously you're opposed to the raising of the THC content. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and help me in my understanding of where I should land on this particular issue?
So as I, through the chair, to the representative, as I stated in my testimony, 5 up to maybe 20% of THC potency is what most medical uses would ask for, would demand. And most people say 5, 6, 7%. When you get into 70, 80, 90, even 99% THC products, now you're looking at the edibles. Now you're looking at the sodas. Now you're looking at the gummy bears and the Pop-Tarts that are being marketed to in markets like California, New York, Illinois, Oregon. Those are where the money, the money's being made. And I just think it's very telling. Number one, where's the money coming from for the medical program? 2, we already had a ridiculously high 70% THC. Why would we add another 20% when it's not necessary for medical use? And so all of that said, goes to make my point that we're not dealing with 2 different industries. And I know that's what we all want to talk about. You got the medical side, you've got the recreational side. Not so. You've got the marijuana addiction for profit industry that we're dealing with here. And even though we might give, I don't know, a no vote on recreational, who cares if we built the whole foundation with the medical program that's now being expanded into recreational?
Follow-up? Representative Plummer.
Thanks, Chair. We all know some friends that use marijuana, gummies, whatever it is, they use marijuana, right? And I've been in law enforcement for 30 years and watched this whole thing unravel. And we'll never get rid of the black markets because of the money people make in marijuana.
That's right.
And they make so much money in marijuana because all the cops, the feds are tied up chasing fentanyl. And fentanyl is killing people right now. So the black market will never go away until we have enough police resources to address the marijuana coming across the open borders along with the fentanyl and the carfentanil. So it's kind of odd that we always try to bridge that gap between medical marijuana and opioid use. I mean, there's studies on both sides of that equation, but every time I went public about marijuana being a gateway drug, I got blasted, literally blasted. Is worse than gun debates, any kind of debate. Marijuana is the worst debate. I know you cited a couple references on this being a gateway drug. In your mind, do you really think it is, or do you think we still have a problem with fentanyl killing our people?
Oh, we definitely have a problem with fentanyl, for sure. I'm sorry, through the chair to the representative. We definitely have a problem with fentanyl. Many friends in law enforcement. Looking at the medical organizations who are in opposition to this, one in particular, Dr. Kenneth Finn, president of the American Board of Pain Medicine, but also a 27-year pain management veteran in the state of Colorado. Marijuana is simply another addiction for profit industry off the backs of youth because they want lifelong customers. This is a health and safety concern. He goes on to say this: there's a very strong link between cannabinoids and opioids. He says the number one risk factor for adolescent opioid misuse is ever having used marijuana. That's for kids. For adults, the number one predictor of opioid use disorder in an adult is ever having used marijuana before the age of 18. If, in my research for this bill and others, I've talked to drug court judges. I've talked to treatment facilities here. in the state of Ohio. And they'll tell you, drug court judges especially, 95% of the people that's coming through their courts started with marijuana. So, I understand, we've got this research study and this research, but I'm looking at the major medical organizations such as AMA, American Family and Physicians Academy, American Automotive, American Academy of Pediatricians, and the FOP. I mean, these guys, I believe, have done a lot more research than probably anybody in this room as to the deleterious effects of legalizing marijuana.
Follow up? Any other questions for the witness? Mr. Ginter, or Representative Ginter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for your testimony. This is obviously a weighty decision for this legislature, for the Senate and the House. This is a bill that weighs, individually, for me as a legislator, this is a bill that weighs on my mind when I'm away from here, because I think it will have tremendous impact. I think it does have impact.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to ferret out, I'm trying to get down to the core so that, frankly, to be honest with you, I feel good about the way I vote, if I can. So my question for you is this. We recognize, and it has been recognized and documented, that marijuana, the medicinal impact of marijuana, is constructive and positive for certain individuals and certain cases. Would you agree that that is true?
I would agree that the CBD component of which Epidiolex would be just extracted CBD. When you talk about seizures, and these are the folks that will bring up and say, hey, this has really helped this person who really struggles with pain, and we're like, oh, that's an awesome story. We got to help this person, and we should. They're talking about CBD. And in the hearing that I heard, that I was a part of last week, the first hearing, sponsored testimony, it was alluded to that the FDA is doing nothing in terms of researching marijuana and its medicinal uses. And that's just not true, and you gave a perfect example of that. 2018, Epidiolex was approved by the FDA, and it's doing much to help folks in chronic pain. To me, it's just a human shield. The medical thing is just a human shield for what the real goal is, and really nobody can deny that. Where the medical programs end up 5 to 10 years later. For California, it took 12 years. For Colorado, it took 5. For us, it's looking like it's taking 6. So everybody wants to see people in pain helped. This is not the way to get there.
Follow up?
Yes, sir. So as I look at the list of those maladies and those conditions that are on the list of allowable or perhaps benefiting from medical marijuana, that list includes more than just, in all due respect, chronic pain. Mm-hmm. It does include other items. My question is this, and one in which I'm facing, and that is, so fentanyl we recognize is a killer. I mean, on the streets, it's a killer. And our former sheriff has just given testimony to that. But yet, we also know that fentanyl is of great value and of great use when used within certain parameters, right, and kept under guard and used by individuals that should use it. We have, and our people have benefited from the use of fentanyl. So we're not going to totally destroy or outlaw fentanyl. In my thinking, marijuana, at least at this point, has some medicinal impact, positive, that is yet to be seen perhaps and the studies to reveal. And so I'm struggling with the fact that we cannot totally outlaw it, but yet would it not be better to put rails, maybe this bill needs tweaked, but would it not be better to put rails around this, tighter rails than what I see? Personally, I'm speaking for myself. Tighter rails, that way individuals can benefit from it much as they do from other drugs that we recognize in the hands of the wrong people, indiscriminately used, would destroy their life. How would you respond to that question?
I would agree, especially looking at the state of Ohio and the current opioid crisis we are in. It started in southern Ohio, right, Scioto County, Senator Johnson's district. I would say we definitely need rails. The question is, what is the appropriate place to establish those rails? When we look at the other states, it's clearly not the state legislature. If this is a medical program, let the FDA take care of it like they did up at Dialex and CBD. If this is a medical program, leave it with the pharmacy board and not the Department of Commerce, right? Or some bootleg cannabis, marijuana industry run department. If it's medical. If it's medical, we don't need 70, 90% potency THC, when for medical purpose, you don't need more than 5, 6, 7. If it's medical. And that's the problem I feel like we're having, Representative, is that are we really talking about a medical bill here? Because the expansion that I'm seeing looks more like recreational than medical. Because many of us would agree, yeah, there are some uses for cannabis. And we're finding more and more. I just don't think that this is the time or the place to be flooding Ohio streets with a Schedule I narcotic, according to the DEA.
Follow-up? Representative Hicks Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
raised a question which I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of Representative Ginter in terms of what you just said about that this should probably be regulated in pharmacy board, medical board, et cetera. Do you, let's move away a little bit from your premise about that, is this really a medical or recreational use, but really look at how do we, if you can answer this, how do we come up with a solution that will balance, this, because the gates are open, so it's happening. So how do we, as he said, put the guardrails on or balance it? How do we make this bill stronger, better, et cetera, in your opinion?
In my opinion, through the chair to the representative, there's 3 major issues I have with this particular expansion bill. One, THC potency. Okay, we're not talking about CBD. We're talking about THC, and that potency level is ridiculous. They would even consider something that high, and it's a tell for where we're really going. 2, I think we need not to put it in the hands of the Department of Commerce. Because that's the playbook for what all the other states have done that are struggling with black markets, that are struggling with traffic deaths and fatalities, that are struggling with more green man shops than McDonald's and Starbucks. That's how you get there. And 3, one thing that rarely is being discussed is the marketing piece, the advertising piece. Right now, I believe the pharmacy board has to approve the advertising from the industry. And I think if we're going to do it, that's a good move. Because one of the biggest problems as it relates to young people is destigmatizing the harms of these high potency products that look just like candy and Pop-Tarts and brownies and cookies. In every state that is legalized, this has happened. And so we have to pay very close attention, as I believe Representative White alluded to, or on the social media, and how this is being marketed and who it's being marketed to and the impacts of that marketing. So those are the 3 areas I would say that really need to be addressed in this bill.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really one quick follow-up. So when we talked about the marketing piece, at one point there was this big push for cigarettes being flooding in poor and disadvantaged communities, and there was a pushback from that. So are you thinking in terms of things like that, or you not even have to push back, but not to even allow it?
Yeah, you can see, and this is where Kevin Sabet, if we could serve you in that way to put together that webinar, that would be awesome. But he really speaks to the similarities of these industries, alcohol, tobacco, and now big marijuana. Alcohol or tobacco was saw to have medicinal purposes. It was ridiculous that it could be viewed as addictive. It's the same playbook that really, I mean, so novices like all of us in this room, it really doesn't take a lot of digging to see the pattern here. But well, I'll wait till the question comes up, but I do have more on that in terms of social justice. But right, right? It's the neighborhoods that are black and brown that get hit the most with these policies, and it's in the name of helping those same communities, and that ticks me off if anybody is concerned.